He's Blake. I'm Ronnie. All the good names are taken podcast. And today we're going to talk a simple topic, Blake. Worst sequels to really good movies. Now, let's clarify this really quickly. We're talking about direct sequels to number ones. For example, Godfather 2 is a direct sequel to Godfather 1. We're not doing the breaking up timelines and saying, okay, all of a sudden Jurassic World is now a direct sequel to Jurassic Park. We're talking about the original first sequels to movies that we thought were really, really good, movies that disappointed us. And it's a video we've been wanting to make for a long time, but for whatever reason with our schedule, we haven't been able to make it. And we're able to sit down today and talk just 5 of the sequels that we were the most disappointed in.
Yeah, so when you talk about you can't break up timelines and stuff, so you can't say Halloween 2018 as a sequel to Halloween the original?
Yeah, we're going about the direct sequels, the first part 2 that was made to these movies. Like if we were going to do Halloween and if one of us were crazy and thought Halloween 2 wasn't any good compared to Halloween, that's the way we'd do it. Or Friday the 13th part 2 compared to Friday the 13th, or Speed 2 compared to Speed 1, just things like that. So okay. You lead us off, Blake. What is your first movie?
So my first movie is something I just watched it about 2 weeks ago, Ronnie, and it's going to be Caddyshack 2. I had never seen Caddyshack 2. I've seen the original Caddyshack 100 times.
Lou donates $8 and says Caddyshack 2 was worse than 9/11.
Well, there you go, Blake. Keep going.
I mean, you're right. I agree with whoever donated that. I didn't hear a name, but it's definitely worse than 9/11. Yeah, I watched this for the first time the other day, and I got to tell you, Ronnie, it is really, really bad. When's the last time you've seen it?
I watched it I'm not going to lie and say I watched the entire thing, but I watched a lot of it a couple of weeks ago just because I wanted to see the Randy Quaid part, because I think he's pretty funny when he goes nuts a couple of times screaming at him. But I wanted to see the part where they completely ruined Bushwood or whatever the hell it's called. And they have that hockey part on number 18, and he comes off the bench and blocks the putt in. And goes, but it's a really stupid movie.
Oh man, like I cannot believe Chevy Chase came back for this movie. That just blows my mind. But of course,
expensive.
Say it again.
Cocaine's expensive.
Well, yeah, but yeah, it's just an awful movie. It's not funny. Dan Aykroyd, like I'm not a fan of Dan Aykroyd. He's one of those guys, kind of like John Lovitz, where I really don't get it. And like seeing Dan Aykroyd in Caddyshack 2 just like confirms like my thoughts and opinions on him. I don't think he's funny at all.
Boz donates $3 and says Caddyshack 2 is an enormous piece of crap. I wanted that gopher to rip the throat out of that main character.
Yeah, I mean, it's a guy who like owns a bunch of low rent homes and apartment buildings. I mean, he wants to become a member of Bushwood only for his daughter. And just like the original, like the best part to me is the heel. Like in the original, Judge Smails was like one of my favorite characters. And in this one, Robert Stack is, believe it or not, the host from Unsolved Mysteries is one of the better characters in a movie with like Chevy Chase, Dan Aykroyd, and Quaid. I mean, it's just an awful movie it doesn't really have a good payoff. And I just cannot believe this got greenlit.
They had to make look back in the 80s, they'd make sequels to any movie that was super popular, and Caddyshack 2 on name alone would get people to the theaters. But after that first week, I mean, when you got Jonathan Silverman, I know we're coming off of Weekend at Bernie's, but he's a terrible actress. The chick that has the annoying
actor,
whatever, the chick with the annoying laugh in Seinfeld, she's a horrible actress. The main guy's daughter. You got the guy who had all the dogs in Seinfeld as the young heel. He's terrible. Nothing about this movie is any good whatsoever. Everybody mailed in their performance. You mentioned Chevy Chase. This was for drug money, plain and simple. They must have cut him a check that was unreal. Dan Aykroyd actually does put some effort into his stupid character, but it's nowhere near what Bill Murray's character was in the original. Robert Stack is pretty good as the heel, but Jackie, whatever his name is, that Jackie Mason, I believe, who's takes Rodney Dangerfield's spot in this movie as the main guy. It's the same exact character. He's not funny. It's a movie that is just a complete piece of crap. It's terrible. It's a terrible movie.
Agreed.
So my first one that I want to talk about is a sequel to one of my favorite movies growing up, and even as a 50-year-old, it's a really still a really good movie that I can watch at any time. Pee-wee's Big Adventure is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it climbs up the chart further and further every year. So when they made the sequel, Big Top Pee-wee, when they made Big Top Pee-wee, I was super excited. I was a kid then. I was a fan of the Saturday Morning Pee-wee show. And what they gave us was complete garbage. It wasn't the same setting as the previous Pee-wee movie, and they don't explain why. I mean, did they run Pee-wee out of town for being a pervert? What's going on there? He's living on a farm now. These circus freaks come through. He's living in a town of all old people for some reason, which doesn't make sense. You got Chris Christopherson. You've got a tiny little woman. You've got the chick from the Dana Carvey movie where you can't remember anything. And so, I mean, it's a horrible, horrible movie. Pee-wee's got a girlfriend with an egg salad sandwich or something like that. It doesn't make sense. It was just totally awful, even with the Screech cameo at the end. I know a few videos ago you mentioned how you like that movie as one of your favorites. So this is one of the most disappointing sequels ever. And I know the sequel that they made on Netflix, everybody was like up in arms about how happy they were about that. I thought that sequel sucked as well. Just Big Top Pee-wee is a total no-go for everything. It's awful. It is completely awful.
And I can get like that opinion because Pee-wee's Big Adventure is a fantastic movie. But I was a huge Pee-wee and Ernest guy when I was a kid. And when Big Top Pee-wee came out, I ain't gonna lie, I really liked it. I loved, Pee-wee being on the farm and then, getting destroyed by a tornado and then, him joining the circus. And then these old people don't want the circus in town, similar to a Footloose, style. And then, he feeds them weenies from his magic garden or whatever, and it turns all the old people into young again, and they love the circus again. And I had such a good time with this movie as a kid. Now, if I watched it as an adult, I'd probably be like, all right, this movie sucks. But from what I remember, I really enjoyed Big Top Pee-wee.
Boz donates $1 and says, I wonder if Mace Montana ever beat them.
Question. I mean, Mace Montana, Chris Christopherson in this movie. He has a girlfriend that's about the size of his index finger that sits in his palm, which really didn't make sense. And I'm pretty sure she's the one that is a mother. She may be the mother of one of the Coreys that drops him off at the party and license to drive. I'll do some fact checking and put it down there if I was right or wrong. And I think she plays a bum in an episode of Wings, but that whole circus scenario really stunk for me. And I didn't like it. Dude, that movie was totally a piece of crap. Okay. So you're next.
Okay. I'm next. I'm going to go with Dumb and Dumber. Now, Ronnie, what are you making a face for?
It's awful.
Did you like that movie?
It's awful.
So
awful.
Dumb and Dumber in 1996, or was it 96 or 95? 94. The Farrelly Brothers. I mean, it was and is a classic. Just such a great movie from start to finish, slapstick, full of just one of the greatest comedies ever made.
It's full of stupidity and it's also full of heart because deep down the movie has some heart to it. You care about the characters. You're absolutely right.
So you decide to make a sequel to this movie and you're not going to have Jim Carrey in it. You're not going to have either star in it. What you're going to do is you're going to make it a prequel to when they met, and it's a horrible idea. And I get it. Jim Carrey probably wouldn't sign on to do it at the time, which is the case, right? So don't make it. Don't do it. Don't involve these characters. Don't say that this is Lloyd Christmas and Harry Dunn. Do something different.
You're suggesting like do a Dumb and Dumber movie, but have completely different Dumb and Dumber characters that we're
yes. Make it different characters. Don't ruin the characters by making a terrible movie, and that's exactly what they did. Now, I've only saw this movie once, and I'll be honest, I'm never going to watch it again. The Jim Carrey, the Dumb and Dumber 2 TO that they made, it's just as bad.
It's awful.
It's just as bad. But this made my list because of how good the original was and just how bad this direct sequel was. Dumb and Dumber, or I think it's got, I forget the guy's name, but he was in the Thing prequel.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
So now he's in the Thing prequel and he's in a Dumb and Dumber prequel.
Cool guy. He was
Yeah.
in Community.
He was in Community as the guy who never wore a shirt. Yeah.
Not another teen movie. He was in a lot of stuff. My number two, I say number two. My next one on my list, I'm going with Independence Day 2. Now, anybody that knows anything about me, for all of its problems, I love 1996. I think it was 1996's Independence Day. I love that movie. I love the simplicity of that movie. I love the scope and just everything about that movie. I love the characters. I love the crazy plot, how they end up coming to a conclusion in the finale of that movie. It's one of my favorite movies, and it's one of those movies that it's no lie that you can put it on repeat in a DVD player, and I can watch it over and over and over and never get tired of it. It's got some great quotes in there. Randy Quaid's good. Will Smith's good. Goldblum's good. All the secondary characters like Robert Loggia is good in that movie. Bill Pullman, probably the only movie that I've watched Bill Pullman in where I'm like, hey, Bill Pullman's decent, even though he's a terrible actor. Bill Pullman definitely overrated, by the way, but a really good movie. And I was excited. And when they came out with Independence Day 2, and you immediately hear no Will Smith, which is a huge mistake. You got to cut the check to Will Smith. You cut the check to Will Smith because with the original cast back, that movie's going to make a ton of money. So you've got Will Smith's son. Imagine that. You've got Jeff Goldblum in it for like a second, maybe, or is he in it for a long period? I can't even remember the movie.
I've never seen it.
You've got Robert Loggia in it for like 32 seconds. You got Bill Pullman back for, I think he's in it for the majority of the movie. But it's just so damn dumb. What they did is they put zero effort into it. We took the technology the aliens left us and we used it to protect our planet. And now the aliens, all these years later, have finally reached our planet and are coming back. And it's a huge alien that's chasing everybody at the end. They brought the Star Trek character back out. He's been in a coma for 100 years. And he wakes up when it gets close. Just lazy writing. And it could have been great. It could have been great. Just keep it simple. The aliens come back. We've tried to rebuild our world and we've used better technology. And now they're back to finish the job because we're the only planet to ever defeat them. So, and we get to meet the mother alien, but they just wrapped it up in so much, crap that the movie was just not enjoyable at all. You don't like seeing some of these characters meet their demise after what happened in 96. So I'm like you, if you're going to make an Independence Day 2 and you can't get everybody back and you can't honor the characters that were in the original, just don't bring the original characters back. Say they're somewhere else. Okay. And have your own heroes and your own side characters. But I mean, it's a total waste of time. Don't go watch Independence Day 2. It's not any good at all. It's just very, very disappointing.
And that's exactly why I've never watched it. Is you basically said all that to me, and I'm like, well, I'm not even gonna waste my time with it. So
it's the same reason I haven't seen Coming to America 2. You said you watched it, and you told me, Ronnie, don't watch it, because you know how much I love Coming to America.
Yeah, and I enjoyed Coming to America Part 2. I don't think it's a great movie, but I know how you are and I know how you think, and I think you will be very disappointed. So, it is what it is. I can't believe that didn't make my list now that I say that out loud. That should have made my list.
All right, next one, Blake.
All right, so I'm going to go Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Part 2. Now, Ronnie, being my older brother, what kind of Turtles fan I was. I mean, this was the tippy top for me. I was obsessed with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I had the action figures. I had the sewer. I had the party bus. I watched the cartoons. I had we had the original movie poster on our wall. So the original comes out 1990, I think. And up until Blair Witch came out, it was the highest grossing independent movie of all time. Made a ton of money. So now, I mean, of course, and it still holds up to this day. And I still believe it's the best Ninja Turtles movie made, even with the, 2014 remake or whatever. So then they decided to make a part 2 because the original made so much money. But because of parent backlash because of the violence in the first one. We don't have any violence. The Ninja Turtles are not allowed to use their weapons, which is ridiculous. It's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fighting the foot soldiers, and we don't get any really good fight scenes. We don't get any cussing like we got in the original, which there wasn't much cussing. I mean, Raphael said a few cuss words, but that's what made Raphael great. That's why he was my favorite. We also get 2 mutants introduced, and I'm like, okay, this could be good. Bebop and Rocksteady. But no, they go in a different direction with Taka and Razor or something like that.
Right, Taka and Razor.
Made from the made from the mutagen. And I'm not going to talk trash about the Vanilla Ice rap because, you know, I love it. I love that the Ninja Turtles are beating people up while Vanilla Ice is rapping in the background and they're still dancing. But it's just a really bad movie. April O'Neil, the original April O'Neil didn't come back. We get a different April.
Story behind that? Do you know?
I think she wanted more money, was what it boiled down to.
Hey, look, we can bend over. We can bend over and bow to the parents complaining that they don't want weapons and curse words. That's fine. We'll totally change up what made the first movie great, what made the comics great. But April O'Neil, actress, asking for more money, that's where we're not doing that.
Something else that bothers me, Ronnie, is Casey Jones was one of my favorite parts of the original. I loved Casey Jones. I love the mask. I love the character. I love everything about it. We don't get Casey Jones in part 2.
It makes zero sense considering it picks up right where the other one left off.
He should have been like the main. He should. I don't know.
They brought the Chinese guy in there, the Japanese guy, whatever he was. They brought one of the pizza delivery guy. He was the most annoying character in this movie. He took the Casey Jones spot. He was one of the actors that was inside the suit for part 1. And I think he's in Surf Ninjas and a lot of stuff. He's horrible. He sucks. I mean,
yeah, he's really bad. And yeah, you're talking about Kino, and it's just, I don't know. It's just like the idea was there. Like you found a way to bring Shredder back. Now bring in Bebop and Rocksteady. And then at the end, let's tease Krang. But we didn't do none of that. What we did do is have Shredder fall, through a pier. He falls into some mutagen. And Kevin Nash appears as Super Shredder. And then he starts punching the pier.
Yeah.
And the pier collapses on him. And you think, I mean, they're turtles. They're falling into water. It's not that big of a deal. Why are they freaking out? They fall into water, and of course, they're okay. It's just a really, really bad movie, a really bad sequel to a phenomenal movie. And that's why it made my list. It's such a disappointment. It's not worse than part 3, though.
It left him nowhere to go, too, because you just end on the finality that Shredder's dead, because Shredder even does the punch up out of the pier, out of the wood there at the end. They go, no, it's not possible. And then his arm just drips. And plus, you can't bring the original Shredder back because you made him into a giant monster at the end. At the most, you just have him disappear under the pier, think he's dead again, and then you return in part 3, like you said, and start introducing Krang and some of the outside characters that are far out and wacky. I mean, you're going to make 2 giant animal mutants, and it's not going to be Bebop and Rocksteady. The only excuse I'm sure they had for that is they wanted to create new characters to sell new toys. But everybody that watched the movie that's expecting source material from the cartoons and the comics, they want to see Bebop and Rocksteady. I mean, that's something that the new Ninja Turtles movies got right, is they gave you Krang, they gave you Bebop and Rocksteady, they gave you all the wacky outside of the galaxy stuff that Ninja Turtles brought to you, because, plain and simple, Ninja Turtles, it can be detective ninjas, it can be ninjas fighting people, it could be ninjas fighting mutants, it could be people from outer space. That's the great thing about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle universe, is there's so many ways to go, different dimensions, outer space, aliens, sludge monsters, and they box themselves up. I mean, first off, you never bow to people that say, hey, we didn't like the violence. It's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Don't bring your kids, because we're going to make money off this movie. Don't bring your kids. You don't like it? Don't bring your kids. Quit bitching. All right. Bottom line. If you don't want to watch it, don't come watch it. But we know people are going to watch it because they came in 1990 and they watched it. So we know we're going to have people that we can make our money back. But if you guys don't like it, sorry, go watch something else or wait for the edited TV version. So the fact that they went ahead and cut, half of their wrist off or half of their arm off just to appease, parental groups is crazy to me. It's crazy. My next one, Blake, I'm going Teen Wolf 2. So the original Teen Wolf, Michael J. Fox becomes a werewolf, becomes a great basketball player. We get to see him have to deal with the town knowing he's a werewolf, everybody in the school knowing he's a werewolf, and perfectly okay with him using those werewolf superpowers to win basketball games before he finally realizes he's got to be himself. He's got to be the human. He's got to be the flawed character, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, and it just made for such a great ending of that movie. The basketball scene at the end of that movie, for as cheesy as it is, I will always like it. I will always get chills during that. It's everything that's right with movies.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is a good ending, especially the guy who stands up in the bleachers who has his little marble bag hanging out.
There you go. And when they showed up with part 2, first off, you can't get Michael J. Fox because he was huge star, not coming back, obviously, for this movie. So you get Jason Bateman, and Jason Bateman's not a bad actor. I love Jason Bateman. Jason Bateman's gotten better and better the older he gets. But the story behind all this, he's in college. He's a boxer. He's the cousin to Michael J. Fox's character in part 1. Styles is there, but it's not the real Styles. It's another Styles. Pudge, or whatever his name is there, the fat one. And it's insane. He's a boxer. He finds out he's a werewolf too. McFly's dad shows up and tells him the werewolf runs in the family. And it's the exact same movie, except they're boxing instead of playing basketball. You get all the same things. And at the end, he comes in as a boxer. He beats the heel. And there you go. Teen Wolf 2 completely sucks. Don't waste your time if you've never seen it. It's not any good. The best part about that movie is when the heel takes that golf ball and crushes it in front of the wolf and walks off. Just awful, awful movie.
Yeah, I think I brought this up before, Ronnie. This is one of those that falls into the category of movies where I saw the sequel before I saw the original. So for a long time, this was Teen Wolf to me. And but you're right. Why not take the time to write Bateman his own family? But instead, it opens up with him riding around with his uncle, which is Michael J. Fox's dad. And Justin Bateman, is Justin Bateman?
No, Jason.
Jason Bateman is, embarrassed to be with him. He's like, oh, I don't, it's embarrassing having him as Scott as my cousin and so. And he's taking him to college for some reason instead of Jason Bateman's parents, whatever. And the whole idea, we offered you a scholarship because your cousins with Scott, and we think you might have that werewolf gene, and we want you to be on the boxing team. What do we do? I mean, we couldn't come up with nothing better than that. And you're right. We get the same thing. He realizes he's a wolf. Everybody's around him that gets excited. All the girls get excited. His friends get excited. And then he starts, doing his own thing and boxing everybody and not involving his other teammates and stuff, just like the original. And then they turn on him, and then the girls turn on him, and then there's just conflict. And now he's got to try to win the boxing match as himself. I mean, stupid and lazy. And if I'm being honest, I kind of like that.
Well, you mean just because something's stupid doesn't mean you can't like it. You're next.
Oh, I'm next. So let's go. So everything you said about Ninja Turtles 2 bowing down, let's go ahead and transfer that over to Major League 2, Ronnie. You made me watch this movie a ton as a kid. Probably my favorite sports movie of all time.
I love Major League.
Rated R. Such a good story. The guy who come up with the story, he's a Cleveland Indians fan. And at the time he said, the only way I'm going to see the Cleveland Indians be successful is if I write a movie. And that's why he wrote the movie. And I thought, especially with us being a White Sox fan, what a concept. The only way you're ever going to see your team win is if you make up a story about them winning. And so fantastic movie, Major League 1. And then we get the sequel. And I'm like, I remember the first time I saw this, I'm like, let's go. What's this going to be about? You find out they lost in the playoffs. First off, you realize it's not rated R.
Awful.
Okay, it's not rated R, so we're not going to have any sex scenes, any nudity, and we're not going to get the great dialogue of curse words that we got in the original. So we're going to get a Japanese player from the Giants. That's the joke. We got somebody from the Giants, not those Giants. We got him from Japan. We're going to turn badass Serrano's character. We're going to turn him into a joke. We're going to turn Dorn into a joke. We're going to turn all your favorite characters, including Rick Vaughn, into a joke. And we're also going to introduce a new catcher because Jake Taylor's getting old. We're going to make Jake Taylor the coach. And this new catcher, he's a country hillbilly idiot.
The guy that farted in Can't Buy Me Love.
Yeah. He did fart and make Seth Green pass out. But just an awful movie from start to finish. We couldn't get Wesley Snipes back because he blew up. We had to get Omar. And again, we couldn't write, hey, we traded Willie Mays Hayes. We traded Willie Mays Hayes. Dorn could have easily wrote that in as why, Dorn's getting rid of all his best players. Could have easily said I had to trade Willie Mays Hayes. But instead, let's get Omar Epps in here to play this character. Stupid. I know it's not him, The best part of this movie is Jesse the Body Ventura.
Jesse the Body Ventura is White Lightning.
And he's in it for 5 seconds.
You're right. That the movie that Will Mays Hayes made in the offseason. He was great. He was great.
But being serious, the best part of this movie is the heel, Jack Parkman, who starts off with the Indians and then gets traded to the White Sox. He is the best part of this movie. They got the owner. The whole story with the owner in the original is I want to lose. I want to finish dead last. That way I can move the franchise to Miami, because I don't want to be in Cleveland anymore. So, and they ruined her character. It's just start to finish a really bad movie, and I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, you hit everything I wanted to say. The cursing, which was a great part of the first one. I know that sounds weird to hear somebody say the cursing, but the dialogue between the players was great. Just those characters, the rough and gritty, down on their luck characters. Somehow they got Rene Russo to come back for like 2 seconds in this movie, but Willie Mays Hayes, I like your idea. They should have traded him. Dorn buys the team, but then loses all of his money and has to sell back for like half the price to Rachel Phelps. It's an awful sequel. It's an awful sequel. I remember the first time I saw a preview for it, I was like, that's not Wesley Snipes. And that killed it for me. The Japanese character saying no marbles, Serrano being a Buddhist, Rick Vaughn selling out and becoming a corporate person. Just a terrible movie. Plus, it's got the girl from Coneheads, and she looks weird with hair after I'd seen the Coneheads, and she didn't have any hair. So, terrible movie. Don't waste your time with it. Major League 2 completely sucks. There's a couple of good lines throughout that movie. Like Blake said, Jesse Ventura is a great part of it. Jack Parkman's great. You even add in somebody like Randy Quaid, who can rarely have a bad role, and he's going to play the crazy fan, and he sucks.
Yeah, the heckler.
Yeah, I mean, towards the end of it, he's kind of funny because he's out there just miserable the whole time. There's 3 people in the stands, but it's awful. The whole movie's just awful. Blake, my next one is Blair Witch 2, Book of Shadows. So
there ain't no damn Blair Witch.
Get out of these woods and go home. There is no goddamn Blair Witch.
The best part of this movie, Blake just said. So in set in the world, the real world, I guess I should say, where Burkittsville, Maryland is a real place, and this movie, The Blair Witch, has sent all kind of weirdos and ruined this town. We're following a bunch of characters that get involved in stuff in the woods where they say all this stuff happened, and it's just a piece. I'm not even going to describe it. It's a piece of crap. The Blair Witch, for whatever you want to think about that movie, if you had the theater experience of the Blair Witch and you're a horror fan and you were 16, 17, 18 at the time like I was, you're going to love that movie. Okay, I know a lot of people don't like it. I like Blair Witch. I think it's a great movie, and it's one of those horror experiences in the theater and looking up the stuff online before going to watch the movie and how they tried to make it based in reality. Well, they come back with this sequel that is just completely horrible. They got the guy from Burn Notice in it. he's god awful, and at the end of it, they give you the big reveal that all these things have been happening and been recording, and they've all went crazy and killed each other. Spoiler alert! It's just a completely terrible movie. The only reason to watch this movie is for the sheriff, who has a couple of scenes throughout the movie. One where he's telling all the goth people to get out of the damn woods. There ain't no Blair Witch. And another one where he appears on the TV messing with the guy from Burn Notice. So Blair Witch 2, complete piece of garbage. Even the new sequel that they made is way better than Blair Witch 2. You set it on fire. It's completely horrible. You're up, Blake.
All right, man, for my last one. So my favorite zombie movie of all time is Return of the Living Dead.
Me too.
Starring our favorite Tom Matthews. So as a kid, when I find out there's a Return of the Living Dead Part 2, is it going to be a continuation? Like, what are we going to do? And I know a lot of people like this movie. I think at one time I've heard you say you like this movie. I don't get it, Ronnie. I don't get it. I don't get what they were going for. Like, part of me wants to say it feels like a Evil Dead 2 type situation because they bring James Karen and Tom Matthews back, but they're different characters. But at the same time, Tom Matthews is saying a line, something along the lines of, it feels like we've done this before, as like a little nod and wink. I don't, and not to mention it's involving kids, so it doesn't feel as serious as the first one did. Like the first one felt like the apocalypse. And not to mention, I know it's a joke with me to mention nudity and cussing and stuff like that, but like the first one, you had nudity, you had cussing, and like I don't consider it vulgar language. Like I feel like that was genuine reactions that normal people would have. And in this one, it's just very silly. You got this doctor character who's making jokes like while people's getting eaten alive and stuff. I don't get it. I think it's got a good cast. Like you got the chick from Weird Science. She's also in Seinfeld. She's the one who won't eat,
Yeah, she's like, eat my brains. You go for it.
Yeah. I was very disappointed by this. Like, and I'm trying to come up with a better idea in my head. And off the top, I can't think of anything like how it could just be a continuation of what happened after they blew up Louisville, Kentucky. And, the virus spread, not the virus, but whatever it is spread, but this was a huge disappointment for me. Like none of the characters I care about. They're driving down the road throwing tomatoes out the back of the truck, and the zombies are eating the tomatoes.
Brains, dude. It's brains.
That's not tomatoes?
Not tomatoes.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Where'd they get that?
Some facility. They got cow brains. So they're throwing the cow brains out down the road, leading them to the place where they're going to electrocute them. Because they do figure out how to kill the zombies in this movie. They find out if you electrocute them, because one gets shot off a hood through like a sign. If you electrocute them, they die.
I always thought that was tomatoes.
No. It's good for the show, though. I mean, that you thought it was tomatoes. People are going to laugh at that.
Because that one kid picks up and eats it, and he's like, and throws it down.
It's the kid that's got the slick back hair like Nash, and Ernest goes to jail. One of the ugliest human beings ever is that kid in this movie.
So you mentioned them getting electrocuted, and that leads me to we get the Michael Jackson zombie who dances. Which is ridiculous.
I love it.
And does electrocution kill him? Because you got that one zombie at the end. He goes, all right, y'all win. No more brains for now. And then he closes his eyes. I mean,
that's the comedy zombie that said, get that damn screwdriver out of my head. Because that's one of the heads that got stolen by James Karen and Tom Matthews out of the graveyard. I mean, look, this movie it makes my list, Blake. I mean, you got it. It would have been on my list if you didn't have it. Return of the Living Dead 2 is one of the most disappointing movies to me because it's nothing like the original. They came back with a comedy route, full comedy route. But I will give it this. It winks and nods, like you said, at us and says, hey, we know what we're doing. We're trying to do something else, sort of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 when they came back with the comedy portion of it. We're trying to do something different, okay, guys, instead of just a sequel. When this is a situation where I just wanted a sequel, okay? But I've learned to appreciate it a little bit more as far as what they were trying to do. Doesn't mean I like it, but I do appreciate what they were trying to do and bringing those characters back and going, hey, audience, it seems like this has happened to us before. And I do think it's a good setting. in this like subdivision that's not finished yet. It felt more like a Tales from the Crypt filmed filmed episode because I really like the lighting and the setting in this area. And then the tanks fall off the truck at the very beginning of it and wash up into this area. And there's the tar man. They just push him off into the water. He's still alive at the end of it. But I mean, kids are left home by their parents. The tank busts on some kids. They turn into zombies. Everybody turns into zombies. That old man's pretty funny. But I mean, it doesn't even compare. It's not even on the spectrum of how good Return of the Living Dead was and the impact it had on my horror movie watching history. So yeah, this definitely belongs on this list. It's awful. It's god awful. Last one I got, Blake, is a horrible sequel, and not even the worst sequel to one of my most favorite movies ever. One of my favorite movies is Smokey and the Bandit with Burt Reynolds and Jackie Gleason. I love that movie. It's a very simple movie. Bootleggers trying to get Coors from one spot of the South, trying to get it from Texas to Atlanta so that they can make $80,000. Chased by the cops, pick up Sally Field. Jackie Gleason is amazing in that movie. It's just a really good movie that it's just going to stand the test of time if you're a Southern person. But when they came back for part 2, Burt Reynolds was already in cruise control with his movies, with the Cannonball Runs and Dom DeLuise and all his movies. So Smokey and the Bandit 2 does the opposite of everything Smokey and the Bandit 1. Iceman comes to get Burt Reynolds, who's down on his luck. Sally Field has left him. Sally Field went back to Junior. They pick her back up sometime in the movie. They're hauling a damn elephant from one place to another to try to get money from Big and Little Enos. It's awful movie. It's an awful movie. And you're a worse human being for having watched it. Just watch Smokey and the Bandit Part 1. And pretend like the sequels do not exist. This was the most disappointing piece of crap. And I tried to like it, Blake. I was like, hey, look up, this is funny. And it's awful.
Yeah, and I took your advice. Like, I remember, I still remember, I called you one day. I'm like, hey, man, I'm fixing to start Smoking the Bandit 2. And you said, don't. Do me a favor, don't. Because it was a marathon. It was going to be 1, 2, and 3. And you're like, just don't do it. Just watch Smoking the Bandit 1 and be happy. And to this day, I've never seen 2 or 3. Now, I have seen a clip from 3 where Jerry Reed, the snowman, is wearing the orange bandit shirt and the cowboy hat. Yeah. And like Burt Reynolds comes back to him in a dream or something. Like no.
So let me explain this to you, and I'm cutting you off. In Smokey and the Bandit 3, Burt Reynolds doesn't come back but for 30 seconds. So it's Jerry Reed pretending to be the bandit with a mustache, with the outfit, driving all around, doing the run for Big and Little Enos Burdett. And Jackie Gleason's chasing him. You get the Patton scene where he's got in front of an American flag rallying all the troops. And at the end of it, he pulls over and he's got the band. He's got Jerry Reed. You don't have the bandit. And Jerry Reed said, watch this.
Hello, Buford.
And he turns around to talk to Jackie Gleason. And Jackie Gleason sees Burt Reynolds. And that's the Burt Reynolds cameo where Burt Reynolds is like, hey, why don't you just leave me alone for a little second and keep chasing me? Once you catch me, it's over with. And that's your Burt Reynolds cameo. And like they all chase each other. It's like the eternal chase throughout.
It sounds so bad.
It's awful. It is awful, 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 awful.
Do you have any honorable mentions, Ronnie?
I do, but I'm not going to mention them because we probably can get a whole nother video out of it if we wanted to with awful movies to part 1s. You want to mention any of yours?
Yeah, well, the other day, Darren and Frank told me to mention Highlander 2, but I wouldn't feel comfortable having that on my list because it's been so long since I've seen Highlander 1 and 2. So I just remember, like, did they cut somebody's head off in Highlander?
Yeah, that's how you kill the immortals. Is you cut their
That's how you kill them, right? So it's been forever since I saw that. So I wouldn't feel comfortable mentioning that. But one I wanted to mention, because I don't think we're going to do this ever again. One I wanted to mention was The Sandlot. Like, and I know Sandlot was more my time than yours, but like Sandlot, dude, it was on TV every day on like those family channels in the mid-90s. And they finally made a part 2 and it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And they made a part 3 that was also horrible. But one that I wanted to talk about, and this is something else that you never really got into, was when I was a kid, I loved Mighty Ducks. And I loved D2. And I even like D3. But if you go back and actually watch D2, it's it's a really bad story. Like, just because this team wins a Pee Wee hockey championship, all of a sudden in part 2, they're going to the Olympics. Like, it's not even like an all-star team. They're taking this specific team from this specific league, and they're going to be put in the Olympics to represent Team USA. We're not pulling the best players from each team all over the state. I mean, it's so stupid. Like, Goldberg on the U.S. hockey team. Get out of here. That movie's terrible. I know.
All right, hit us in the comments. What are your worst sequels to really good movies? Remember the rules on this now. It's got to be the direct sequel to the original movie. Hit us in the comments. Tell us what we got right. Tell us what we got wrong. If you haven't subscribed yet, what's the deal? Subscribe. Otherwise, we'll just keep making videos. Blake, anything else before we end this?
Nope.
We'll see you guys next time.